Welcome, and thank you for joining us at Senior Moments, Successful Aging, brought to you in partnership with the Area Agency on Aging, NACOG, and the Yavapai College Division of Lifelong Learning. Today I'm your host, Brandon Baxter with the Area Agency on Aging, and I'm excited to bring you today Mick Woodcock. Mick is the curator, chief curator at the Sharlot Hall Museum. He started work there in 1979, so that means this year you're going to be celebrating 36 years at the Sharlot Hall Museum. That's wonderful. He's a graduate of the University of Arizona in Tucson with a degree in history, and today we're going to be talking a little bit about the Sharlot Hall Museum. Mick, thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you for having me, Brandon. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, thank you so much, and I'm sure members of our community are familiar with the Sharlot Hall Museum, but for those who are newer to our community or who haven't been over there in a while, give us a little background on the Sharlot Hall Museum.
Well, the Sharlot Hall Museum is a state agency. Most of our support comes from local giving and a little bit from the city of Prescott, but we're actually located at 415 West Gurley. We are 2 blocks west of the Courthouse Plaza, and if you park in the parking garage, then we're only 1 block west of where you are. So we're centrally located, and we are a history museum. We have prehistory, we have nice grounds, we have a lot of good programming.
Fantastic, fantastic. And it's a beautiful facility. If you haven't had a chance to get over there recently, please check it out. Talk to us a little bit about the importance of the Sharlot Hall Museum and the importance to our community specifically.
Well, when Sharlot Hall started collecting history, it was back before she started the museum. She started the museum in 1928, but she was literally collecting history before 1900. The thing that was kind of drove her, she was a pioneer herself, but she came here when she was 12 in 1882, and as she was growing up, here are the old pioneers. They're getting older, they're dying off, and she was fascinated by the history of the area, so she started collecting it, wound up being the first woman, and I believe only woman in territorial government. She was a territorial historian right before statehood.
Fantastic, fantastic. And a self-taught woman, from what I understand as well, with very little formal education, but highly literate.
Oh, extremely literate. She did go to public school, down in Dewey, had a little one-room schoolhouse, and then she was in Prescott for a little while going to school, and in fact that's where she got her real interest in history. She had gone to the governor's mansion. Henry Fleury was one of the old pioneers, was living there, and he told her all these wonderful stories of the founding of Prescott and territorial government, because he had been here from the beginning. He'd come here with the governor's party, and so that was pretty much the extent of her formal education, but she read, she wrote, she was highly literate, and we have a voice recording, one of the big disc recordings of her, and I was very surprised at it was not the voice I expected. She sounds very cultured. She sounds almost Southern in her delivery. She's very articulate.
Wow, that's fantastic. And it's great to see that even back then she knew the importance to our community that the oral histories and the history that we can learn from the native cultures and peoples and the experiences of those that had settled the area before us, that was an empowering thing for her, and our community still is reaping the rewards for her foresight.
Oh, absolutely. If she had not founded the museum, not only what she collected, but what's come in since her passing away in 1943 would have been lost.
She really was a catalyst for big change here in our region.
Very much so.
Fantastic. And from what I understand, Sharlot Hall Museum is not just a great place to go and take a look at artifacts. There are some fantastic events coming up here.
Oh yes, we're right at the cusp of our outdoor programming season. So we'll start off first weekend in June is Folk Arts Fair. Then we have Prescott Indian Art Market, which is the second weekend in July, and then we'll we have several other events, but our other big event, summer event, is in October with Folk Music Festival. And so we have other things going on. We have living history, but those are kind of the biggies.
So there's some exciting events for our community members to go out there and meet the great folks at the Sharlot Hall Museum, interact with all of the fantastic programs and artifacts that you have there, but maybe make it an intergenerational activity or event. Maybe the grandparents can go on out with the grandchildren and start sharing the love of learning and history that we all should thirst for to continue in the spirit of Sharlot.
Oh, absolutely. We very often have grandparents bringing grandchildren to the museum, and now having grandkids, I value those kind of experiences because while we're not a children's museum, we try to have things that are interesting to children. So our two new galleries, the Beasts of the Pleistocene and our Ice Age Hunters have got animals, and we've got animal not mannequins, they're representations. We've got actual bones of Pleistocene animals that were excavated in the area. They're all pretty interesting things for kids. Plus, we have fourth grade school tours. In fact, we'll be having a lot of them here in the next few weeks. But, kids are fascinated by pretty much anything that goes on there. There's just different things. They like the stagecoach, or they like the building interiors, or they like the schoolhouse, or whatever. So.
Well, and it's where the material comes to life. That's the exciting part about the museum. We can be in a classroom setting and learn about all of this stuff, but when we get a chance to visit a facility like the Sharlot Hall Museum, where the material we read actually comes to life before our very eyes, where we get to see the evidence of the animals that existed before the Pleistocene epoch happened, the hunters that were there that were going after these animals, all of a sudden it really captures the spirit of not just the knowledge, but the entire experience. And it really drives and develops that thirst for learning. So that's the exciting part about that, is we can get out there with our loved ones, and learning should never stop, no matter how old you are. That's the entire purpose of the lifelong learning program, is that we're always ready to learn something new. So whether it's your first time at the museum or your 372nd time, I guarantee you there are new things to learn for everybody.
That's true. I don't think anybody actually goes to the museum and reads every single word, because there are a lot of words there. But it's true. You can go and learn something new every time, and we are always developing new exhibits. We just opened a new one-year exhibit in conjunction with the Yavapai County Sheriff's Office, which features 150 years of law enforcement in Yavapai County. So there's another thing. We're always having new exhibits. We've got a temporary exhibit on mapping Arizona. If you like big maps, we've got them.
Fantastic. So there's a little something for everybody. If you like cartography, let's go take a look at some maps. If you're a big buff of history, there's no shortage of information to peruse. I mean, Mick, you've been there for 36 years now, and I guarantee you, just in your 36 years there, the amount of knowledge that you've accumulated probably doesn't even scratch the surface as to what is still left there to learn within the artifacts and the exhibits. So it's a wonderful, unique opportunity to go out there and grow your own personal knowledge base, but develop those relationships with your loved ones, with your family members. Go out there and spend some time with your kids or your grandkids. Take part in the extracurricular events with this gorgeous weather that we've been blessed with here in northern Arizona. It's time to take advantage of it and really develop those bonds that'll last a lifetime, and develop that lifelong learning that is so important to keep us engaged and active within our community, not only now, but for years to come.
Absolutely.
An engaged community is a successful community, so we're excited to look at some of the things that the Sharlot Hall Museum is bringing to us. Now, we understand that the museum has a wide range of opportunities that are available, not only for the casual observer, but let's say you find yourself to be in a position where you have a little bit more time on your hands, and you're maybe looking to give a little bit back to the community that you're in. Does Sharlot Hall Museum have some of those volunteer opportunities?
We have an incredible number of volunteer opportunities. In fact, We're graduating our 2015 volunteer class this morning. I'm unable to be there, but we had, this is probably the largest class we've ever had, over 20 people, and it's we cover everything. In fact, talking to one of the volunteers this morning, she was impressed with how thorough the training is. And whether you want to be a building docent or a tour guide or work in archives or on the grounds or in some other capacity, we certainly have the training and the opportunity.
So that's fantastic. Not only do you have volunteer opportunities, but it sounds like you have a whole slew of various opportunities. So wherever your heart is, whether it may be being a docent and sharing the information maybe that you've acquired over the years in visiting the museum and then giving that knowledge back to the community, that's a wonderful opportunity. But I know that there are some people maybe out there that are a little more hesitant to get out there and do the public speaking side of things. It sounds like there's a huge, wide variety of opportunities for all personality types and skill sets as well.
It's true. If you never wanted to talk to a person, you could work in archives. We have volunteers in collections. We don't have any openings right now, but we have collections volunteers. They never have to talk to anyone, and they love it. We're affectionately refer to them as pot dusters, but there's not a lot of pot dusting going on. We're mostly doing inventories, making sure everything's there. It's got a digital photo, if it's okay. You know, sometimes, you know, when you've got a collection that runs from prehistoric pottery that's been dug out of the ground to, well, our iron turbine windmill, which is on the National Register of Historic Places. You've got a lot of different materials. We're just looking through the collection and just how many different types of objects we have. We just have a new curator on board, Kylan Cummings, who is our curator of collections. She's been going through and acquainting herself with the collections, and just amazed at the number of things that we have that are, you know, in storage, but they're there when we need to put something on exhibit.
And I would assume that just cataloging all of these amazing artifacts that you have would be just an enormous, monumentous effort to try to document it all, to record it, like you said, to take the pictures of it, to make sure that you have it all readily accessible for when and if a new exhibit will call for that artifact to be on display.
Oh, that's true.
Sounds like that's a rather large job that you could use some volunteers with from time to time.
Well, and we've got Wednesday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday morning crews. We've got some folks that work in the afternoon, but the volunteers are doing the bulk of the cataloging and documentation and photography of the collections.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, there's quite a bit of opportunity.
So if you're looking for an encore career, you have a little time on your hands, it sounds like there's some wonderful volunteer opportunities available down at the Sharlot Hall Museum. And if you have the gift of gab, or you just like to talk to people in general, right, maybe that docent position would be a good one for you. Go on out there and take some of that acquired knowledge that you've developed over the years and share it. Give it back to those around you, and really develop that passion, that thirst for learning that is so important for our community. We understand that Murray Smallins is your volunteer coordinator there, yes, at the Sharlot Hall Museum. So if you're watching this show and you're interested in maybe giving a little bit back or learn a little bit more about the volunteer opportunities that exist at the Sharlot Hall Museum, we encourage you to give Murray a call. He can be reached at 928-445-3122. And remember, just because you may not like to talk to people, or just because you think maybe your skill sets aren't exactly going to fit into the bigger picture of what Sharlot Hall Museum is doing, we know that there's a plethora of opportunities out there for all skill sets. And if you want to give a little back to the community, at the same time giving back to the same organization that has kept so much of our history relevant and alive and living and growing here, please give the Sharlot Hall Museum a call. That number again is 928-445-3122. We talked about all of the wonderful things that the Sharlot Hall Museum continues to bring to our community. Let's talk about some of your past favorite exhibits and events that you've been able to take a part of, and share some of those wonderful stories with us.
Well, I think at least at the top of the, if not at the top of the list close, is the Fort Whipple Museum, which we run in conjunction with the Veterans Administration Hospital. It's open Thursdays, Fridays, and Saturdays. It's totally volunteer staffed, and it presents the history of Fort Whipple and then the hospital when it becomes an Army hospital during World War I. And just the research and the development of that and working with the hospital personnel, that was personally very fulfilling for me, because it's been a part of the community since 1864. In fact, it'll be having its 151st birthday in May.
Fantastic. Fantastic. So in the Satellite Museum, this Fort Whipple Museum that you're closely aligned with, it sounds like a lot of this history that we are learning about was really brought to the forefront by the Sharlot Hall Museum, by their efforts to really make this well known, to make the Fort Whipple Museum a reality, and then to share that information to the community members about how for 151 years this has been a part of our identity. And not only that, the role it served through the Great War.
That's true. We can't emphasize how important that facility has been to the community. Back before we had a Prescott Chamber of Commerce, we had a Yavapai County Chamber of Commerce, and they were successful in lobbying Congress not to close the fort, and in fact to have it remodeled. This was around 1900, and so brand new buildings. So it is not going to be closed. It's a very important part of medical service for our veterans.
Fantastic. Well, and that's an incredible thing to be able to share to our community as well, is the resource that you are, not only for the history, but for what we can do for advocacy. Advocacy is something that we individually can take part in. Your advocacy efforts have been instrumental in getting a lot of this shared knowledge out there within our community, and it sounds like the advocacy efforts that took place back in the 1900s are also greatly responsible for much of this shared knowledge and history existing here today for us to learn from. So that goes to show you, no matter what, be an advocate for what you believe in. If you think there's something important out there within your community that's worth saving, it is worth saving. You can be that advocate. And 100 years later, we may be talking about you in a different form of media,
sure,
as how you were a valuable part of saving history for your community for years, decades to come. That's fantastic. So what about this upcoming folk arts fair that we have that we're all gearing up for? Talk to me a little bit about some of the things that the community members can expect to find at the folk arts fair.
Well, folk arts fair, we try to gear it towards children, so it's got a number of children's activities, but there's pretty much something for everyone, and we draw members from the community that do natural dyeing. There'll be spinning and weaving and tatting. We'll have milliners, hat makers. We'll have animals of different kinds. We were discussing that just recently, as to what to have and how many to have. And then we've got woodworking and wood carving, and we'll have folks doing military things. And last year we had a saddle maker. We'll just have, plus our living history folks will be there in the ranch house and Fort Misery Schoolhouse, printing office, doing various things. I think we have Brian Hughes lined up to do blacksmithing again. So there's just a lot of different activities, children's games and activities. So
what a wonderful opportunity to bring that history to life, like you said, that living history. And it's really where we have that opportunity to, with our own eyes, see what the history books have been telling about us. Maybe get our hands on a blacksmith's hammer and feel the weight that tool carries, and to think what it would take to actually fashion all the tools and equipment that you needed to make your life run gives you a greater appreciation for the ease we have in this life from time to time. Wow, my screwdriver broke. I need to go down and buy a new one. No, it's time to fire up the coals, get them hot, and make myself a new one. That's a completely different perspective on life and the struggles that our ancestors had to go through just for day-to-day existence. It's wonderful that you have that opportunity for the newer generations to experience that as well, to get out there and really be amazed by how far we've come in such a relatively short period of time, but to not lose sight of what it took to get here and the value that still exists in learning the struggles, so we can be a little more appreciative for some of the things we have in this life.
Certainly.
Fantastic. Well, Mick, I really appreciate everything that you're doing for our community. As we move towards some of the events later on in the summer, you talked a little bit about a couple of the other events that are happening in July and October.
Prescott Indian Art Market. That's the second full weekend in July, and what it is, it's a juried show. We have our own Native American artist jury. They pick the artists. The staff has nothing to do with that. We merely set the tables up and get the place nice. And then these Native American artists, and there's a whole jurying process that is gone through to make sure that these people really are Native Americans, that their art is quality, and so that when you go, you know that if you want to buy something, it's the real thing.
That's fantastic. And you get this cultural buy-in and this perspective as well. Oftentimes we know that what we hear from artists is that they feel a lot of the knowledge of the art and the story behind the art gets lost when they have to then sell it to a middleman, and the middleman then sells it to the public. So it's a wonderful opportunity for the artists themselves to share a little of the history of the pieces of the art as well, for them to really interact one-on-one with the buyer. And I know from personal experience, it makes it such a more valuable experience when you have that opportunity to communicate, to, in essence, develop that relationship with that individual who created that wonderful masterpiece. It lends a whole new unique perspective to purchasing a painting or a rug or a sculpture of some sort. So that's a wonderful opportunity. And the fact that you go through and you take the time and effort to verify the legitimacy, the quality of that effort, it takes a lot of the concern away from the members of the public, so they can feel confident that they know when they're moving forward and making this purchase, it's already been vetted that this individual really is providing you a quality piece.
It's true. And that, to me, that's one of the biggest things that we offer to those that come to the art market, is the fact that it's all done by Native Americans and it's top quality material. And we do have demonstrators there. We give them a booth. They demonstrate silver making or whatever, rug weaving, whatever it is, and you can't buy from them, but you can talk to them about how the craft is done.
That's fantastic. Really gives you some insight into what it takes to develop that piece of art, because oftentimes we just see the finished product. We don't really get a full appreciation for the skill and the time and the effort that goes into developing something like a weaving, for instance, where we see the finished product, but when you actually see them working on the loom and weaving those things, it's amazing to see that, how much hard work and effort that takes, and it's exciting to bring that to life. It's been a very exciting opportunity here for Senior Moments to meet with Mick Woodcock from the Sharlot Hall Museum here in Prescott. It's been an absolute joy to have you a part of our community for 36 years. And it's been a joy to have the Sharlot Hall Museum a part of our community for well over 100 years. So we're very excited this with her knowledge, with her collection going on even before the museum opened. It's really exciting to see how all of this history has been gathered, collected, and now opened up for everybody to share with this fantastic community that we live in. We do have those upcoming events here in June. We have more in July and more in October. So come on down for the outdoor events. And if you're not a big one into the outdoor events, come on down any day of the week and check them out for their indoor events and exhibits as well. The Sharlot Hall Museum is a wonderful, wonderful addition to our community. We're excited to continue to support them and all that they do for us. You can reach Mick at the Sharlot Hall Museum. The Sharlot Hall Museum can be found online at www.sharlot.org. We're excited to have you here, Mick, and we want to say thank you so much. We really want you to come on back. Tell us a little bit more about some of the events that are coming on in the future so we can continue to grow this wonderful community involvement with lifelong learning, because, as you know, we're never too old here to continue our education. What we do at the Area Agency on Aging is to try to keep those intergenerational activities alive and well within our community, because we know that as we age, our communities can sometimes feel a little less accessible to us, and that's not what we want. What we want you to realize is that there's a lot for you to do within the community, even if you are no longer in the workforce. There are these wonderful volunteer opportunities that you have at the Sharlot Hall Museum, and we talked about getting a hold of Murray Smollins at 928-445-3122 if you would like to continue giving back to the community through the Sharlot Hall Museum and their volunteer opportunities that we have. We talked about the Satellite Museum and the Fort Whipple Museum and what a wonderful place that has had within our community. And we talk about all that the museum has to offer, not only adults, but also the programs that are available to the younger generations as well. So I encourage you, get out there, do some intergenerational activities with your family members and your loved ones. Visit our Sharlot Hall Museum and go ahead and see what a wonderful world of history that we have at our disposal right here locally. It's been a wonderful opportunity to be with you today at Senior Moments Successful Aging. My name is Brandon Baxter, and I am the Family Supports Program Manager for the Area Agency on Aging. This show has been brought to you today in coordination with the Area Agency on Aging, NACOG, and the Yavapai College Division of Lifelong Learning. Our producer is Nancy Bennett, and she can be reached at 928-717-7607. Thank you so much for joining us. We look forward to seeing you again. Bye-bye.